I've also been thinking a lot about the theme of this project and how you've approached it, all of you. And this is definitely one of the sort of most pressing questions we're facing today, is sort of what can we find common ground? And we see it in Europe, in the States, in India, everywhere, China, and that people are sort of not finding common ground, and it's and then there's the question, of course, of home. What is home? We in this sort of art culture business, we're used to traveling around, and except in the last couple of years with COVID, so we feel at home in different places. I feel at home in Copenhagen, but that's because we're a former colony. And but Iceland is a strange place, as you have obviously observed. And we've always been sort of just outside of everything, whereas of course Poland and Lithuania, I mean, used to be the biggest power in Europe, not so long ago, a few hundred years ago. And then things change, and then things change again, and everything changes, and people move, and people emigrate, and people come. And here in Iceland, we're now when I was young in the 60s, meeting a foreigner was very rare, So, and no, there were no foreigners in Iceland. There's a few musicians, maybe. But now, of course, we're up to close to 20%, I think. People who have come from abroad, and it has greatly enriched our society, I can tell you. And fortunately, we haven't had much of a backlash to this. A couple of political parties have sort of tried to incite populist anger against immigrants or migrants, but they've basically been voted out. So I'm in that sense I'm a little bit proud of Icelanders in that we seem to some degree at least welcome people here, as we should, because we came here 1100 years ago from nowhere, or nobody knows from where. And so this concept of where you can be at home is, of course, crucial to all of us. And moving to another country is a very big step. You have to make a new home for yourself. And you have to sort of make friends and make, create some sort of an environment for yourself. But not everyone has that chance. And that's something we're facing now, for example, at the border of Poland and Belarus. And some of the works in the exhibition deal with this problem. And it's so difficult to figure out what's going on and how you should respond to it. I have a young Polish friend who I've talked to him, and he sort of accepts the statements of the Polish government about what's going on the border. And I said, well, yes, but you can't just leave these people to die. And he said, well, it's not our fault, we didn't ask them to come. So there is always this sort of back and forth. But in the end, it comes down to this, do we really let people die, or let people stay in desperate circumstances rather than inviting them over? And for myself personally, I think I had a very strange experience back in the 90s. I was in Toronto for a conference, and it was in winter, and I was going to a party. So I had a bottle of wine, and I was walking through downtown, and I had heard the weather report, and it was going to be minus 40 in the night. And all over downtown, I was more or less stepping over homeless people who were bedding down on the sidewalks for the night, and it was going to be minus 40. And the feeling I got from this, it was just, there was nothing I could do, of course, you know. But if we don't share our feeling of home and having common ground with everyone, if we just ignore people who are in need or who don't have a home, that's not a sustainable society, basically. I mean, if we push desperate people away at our borders, or as we do in Iceland, or the officials do, send them back to Gaza or wherever they were trying to escape from, then basically I would say that sort of an attitude cannot be sustained unless we all think together, and unless we all sort of work together and try to find more opportunities to come together, as this group has done, to get to know each other and to sort of create communities, then we're doomed. We will not be here for long. And we're seeing this now even more sharply with the COVID epidemic, because we in the West have bought up all the vaccines, and people in Africa, for example, have not had any, and we're going for our third or whatever, fourth, shot, and God knows what, but it just keeps coming back at us because we are all in it together, and migration and especially, of course, from people fleeing war and desperation, famine, etc. Unless we find a way to because it's not just a political issue; it's a conceptual issue, and it's almost an artistic problem. How do we find some community? How do we find symbols? How do we find some way or at least a program for dealing with this? There are a lot of forces that actually in society that want to establish this this sort of divisive idea. We have the rise of populist right-wing parties all over Europe, and of course, watching the United States in the last 4 years, has been sort of a kind of a tragic soap opera of some sort, and it's serious. We have to do something about this. And us artists and intellectuals, and, sort of weird cultural types like us, I think we have a big responsibility when it comes to that, because we are supposed to be, or we pretend to be, the creative thinkers of our societies, and if we don't do anything, if we don't work to try to come to some sort of an understanding and to communicate that understanding, then pretty much we can just give up. That's, there isn't going to be any solution unless we go there. So I'm very happy to have been invited to take part in this project for just 3 days, and maybe I'll see you again in Poland. But so the discussion now is going to be about these issues, and I'm not going to talk too much, but let's have a conversation. That's what it's all about. That's what this project is about. Bringing together people from different places to make friends, to make conversation, to discuss things, and to create something that can be seen as some kind of a symbol or a gesture or an image, whatever, to help us towards some better understanding and a solution. So thank you. Thanks.
We have to be a little bit on time. Anja, can you say a few words also?
Yes. So I just wanted only one sentence that together with us are two special guests, because I don't know if you mentioned before. We have two women with us. One is from Polish representative of Polish embassy, and the second is the renowned Icelandic artist Ruri. So they are our special guests. So I would like to say welcome.
Oh, welcome.
Thank you, and I'm sorry.
You have to introduce yourself.
My name is Anna Wojtynska. I'm anthropologist. I'm working at the university in Iceland, and I'm Polish, and I'm part of this project. So I will be more talking about my understanding of common ground.
Sorry.
Yeah, I speak louder, I know.
Yeah.
You need to, must, because it's such a long distance.
Yeah, I will do my best, but I mean, this is actually my problem. I speak low, so...
You need mic, yeah.
And,
Carry my mic with you.
And I'm sorry I will be reading. I mean, I otherwise don't handle the stress. But so Common Ground, the name and the focus of this ongoing project, which this exhibition is part, can bring various associations and provoke different thoughts. Obviously, the earth literally constitutes a common ground for all of us living humans. While globalization, technological advancement, and following so-called time-space compression makes us quite aware of existing and growing interconnectedness, economic, culture, environmental. A common ground can also be a metaphor for reciprocal entanglements of people, animals, and plants, ongoing interaction between many kinds of beings, our immersion and dependency on the nature, as well as our power to interfere with it, often with damaging results. However, perhaps because I am studying migration, my first thoughts in relation to common ground were rather focused on place, mobility, and belonging. And I understand common ground as a possibility, negotiated and enacted locally in context of diversity. A typical association related to place, in opposition to abstract space, is localization and fixity. We often use the idea of place to anchor our identities, and we often think about place as molding who we are, our subjectivity. Place denotes placement, grounding, and being at home, and so further connotates the notion of familiarity and safety. Place provides the foreground for communities' sense of affinity and relatedness. Therefore, place tends to be perceived as static and immune to time. Or at least we wish sometimes places would stay the same, to fit into our memories of them. Following this logic, any change can be framed as a threat, and induce resistance. But places are always in the making, shaped and transferred by people inhabiting them. And increasingly, these people come from different places, and even from places quite far away. They don't speak same language, have different habits, different religions. In times that are characterized by mobility, fewer and fewer people are actually living in place they were born, or live in one place through their lives. Not only flow of people transforms places, but also flow of ideas, commodities, and capital. The places increasingly become nodes of global connections, transvested by global economy and transnational practices, simultaneously undergoing processes of homogenization and diversification, as for example, many migrants maintain socially embedded in their countries they come from, staying in touch with relatives and friends through internet, following news, or adhering home traditions. We can share geographical space, but belong to different places, or maintain mentally distant. This poses a quite acute question: how can we imagine a common ground and a sense of a community in these increasingly socially fragmented places? How do we build a common ground in the context of growing diversity? It's important to remember that large number of contemporary migrants are mobilized not so much by the desire to live somewhere else, but because of global inequalities. And these global inequalities tend to be reproduced in ethnically segmented labor markets and persistent social boundaries. Let me bring Iceland as an example. Immigrants, as we heard, are now about 15% of Icelandic population. However, in some towns, they are 1/4 or even half of the population. Immigrants make 20% of Icelandic labor market. Yet in some industries, like for instance, fish processing, hospitality sector, they make up to half of all employers. In construction, 1/4 of the workers are of foreign origin. However, the official numbers may not reflect the actual situation, given that many of the they are employed through subcontracting companies and temporary staffing agencies. Despite some immigrants coming to take specialized position, the migration to Iceland is mostly driven by low-wage jobs and low-skill occupations, like those in cleaning, manufacturing, or tourism. More than half members of Efling, which is the union for unskilled workers, are of foreign origin. In some cleaning companies, migrants make up to 90% of workers, if not counting the managerial staff. This indicates that migrants tend to be spatially and socially confined, assigned to certain workplaces and social class, with quite limited interaction with so-called local population. How can we then encourage places of encounters to negotiate common grounds? Seweryn Chwała, one of the Polish artists living in Iceland who was taking part in the exhibition preceding the Common Ground project, displayed a self-portrait that showed him wearing a uniform of the fish processing worker. He was working in a fish processing at the time. Additionally, he was wearing a face mask, which has been obligatory during pandemic. Totally covered by this unifying outfit, he was representing any worker of the plant, anyone and no one. His face was not visible. There was nothing that would allow to recognize him as a particular individual. Well, even his gender was indistinguishable in this outfit. There was nothing but a small color palette that he was holding in one of his hands, which was tentatively disclosing his inconspicuous identity of an artist. How can we move beyond stereotypical perceptions of each other? How can we move beyond simplistic figure of a migrant worker, Eastern European, or Icelander? How to set up grounds for mutual recognition? The recently published results from a survey among Polish living in Iceland, Polish people, showed that about 70% of participants experienced discrimination, with 20% saying that experienced some kind of violence on the basis of the ethnic origin. The title of the report used a quote from one of the participants who was told, "No one wants you. Go back to your country." Can we imagine a common ground beyond nationalistic logic? Can we build just and equal society across different nationalities that were made to live side by side? It seems that despite the forces of globalization, or maybe because of it, we are increasingly being confined, divided, detached, and antagonized on different levels. Expansion of capitalism and neoliberal subjectivity polarize society, destabilize economy, and brought us to the edge of ecological catastrophe. More and more people feel that the current system does not work. But how can we overcome self-focused particularism to enact solidarity and fight for just and the future? I think that art and art methods, in a quite broad sense, have a great potential to enact sensitivity, empathy, and mutual understanding, to initiate communication beyond languages and differences, to lay foundations for a common ground. We also need to reclaim art to public, to inspire people to imagine different worlds and utopian home without social hierarchies and injustice. Thank you.
I want to thank you, Anja. I have to say, this is like a little bit heartbreaking that we have not been using more time or had more time to use for exactly this discussion. So if it would be possible, I would like you to send it to us, and I would like everybody to read it. It would be best if it would be translated in each country, so we have it strongly in our mind, because it's not only in Iceland.
No.
So I think it is each country that we are members for that have the same thing with different nations. So I think we have to have this strongly in mind when we go to Torun. So I hope, Anja, that you will send us this, and I would like that it would be translated in Icelandic, Lithuanian, Polish. So we don't have to understand it only in English, which is one other thing that I miss a little bit, that none of us are speaking the language of each country. Only even though we would only be able to speak a little bit, it would be great. So I hope it will be okay if Anja will send it to us. So then next is Justas, and I would like him to introduce himself, full name and profession and so on.
Okay. So thanks. So it was very nice to hearing both of you. And my name is Justas Kasys. I'm from Lithuania. I'm a scientist and also educator in Vilnius University. And my main subject is climate change, and from different perspectives, from social to ecological and so on. So it's really nice to be here and to maybe to widen a little bit also this perspective of migration and common groundness, not only talking about sustainability or that we don't have it, but still talking about a lot. And I don't like this word a lot, because it's everything about, a human perspective of sustainability, but not about the nature itself. Maybe we can adding some small parts, but it's not works in general way. And have some reflections on what you said about, I think, can we make some commonness in ground and everything? It's a really difficult question, but I think we have very nice pre-project activity in Lithuania. So we have it is project written by Lithuanian Artists Association, and we held in Palanga, and some of our artists were participating from Lithuania there, and the idea was to play some roles as well about migrants and maybe Lithuanian artists, and the idea was to introduce, to invite, Belarusian students, which are actually already having in Vilnius we have the university for Belarusian university, Free Belarusian University, and we are studying some specific thing. They're more about, I think, it's visual design or something like that. Maybe artists could add something if I miss some points, because I was a little bit late into this thing. But what we have is an experience to have some people who are not originally from Lithuania, and they are some kind of migrants, even though they're students and from very close country to Lithuania, but still has a nice experience how different and the same we are at the moment. First, I think the first impressions for them was very not nice, but we have no structure and no very detailed schedules to make something. But later it emerges into very nice conversations, and when I came in, I found you a very good team. So can we? I think yes. Even sometimes we need only 1 week to be more closer when we think it before. But of course, it's just a nice example, and maybe not so easy to be implemented in bigger societies or bigger communities. But yes, the possibilities are, and we can find very different ways to achieve it. And I am totally agree with Anya that for me, as even I'm coming from a different field, for me the art is one of the best things to make it. And we also have very nice presentations of the students, what they create about the Palanga, the environment. It was later, it came later, but I was surprised how we're in this field, because maybe we should say, oh, we just spent very nice days in Palanga and that's all, we're closing that, but we have some ideas which is actually go beyond our first project idea or pre-project idea. So I hope that our project will also go outside more than not only between our small nice community which we are already connected with, and I very like that we are having more people to join us, and maybe we'll come to Torun or whatever it will go later. But so actually I'm still optimistic as to say what we can, but the way we are doing in the bigger way, it's still not working as it should be. And you also mentioned this chances. And you know, when we are talking about the chances, we are usually talking about the probabilities of throwing a dice and something, and it's not working like it is. So if we are talking about chance, so usually somebody will not get this chance to get on this sustainable way onto this nice commonness it is. I would like to talk about more universality, about more which holds us, because human memory is quite a short period. Of course, we have a lot of artifacts which still keeping us to remember very ancient cultures and something like this, but what we are really doing very successfully, really forgetting with our natural origins, which was before all this cultural development and something like that. So I really would like to come back even more back on, or maybe into more future, to feel that we are still in the same planet, not in the small community, not in Iceland, not in Belarusian and Polish or Lithuanian borders, which is very important things happening right now, but to think about the world as a home, as a planet, or as a whole space on it. So for me, I think it will be the chance to talk on this topic a little bit more in Torun and to prepare some, maybe more, even some examples of how we can understand this holiness of everything. And yes, it was just a starting point, but thank you, of course, thank you all for contributing to me with small interviews, which I will use in previous topics, and just the development of ideas of commonness in general. And yes, so I really suggest to think about our culture, history, and sustainability in more wider perspective, because the borders, the nationalistic approaches, it's not needed anymore. Maybe it was some years ago, because when we are going for gain some independence, it's my point of view, of course, but I don't feel that nationalistic. Yes, we can keep it something which is very unique, very special, but we should go for more global way, or more naturally global way, not from a people's perspective, but from nature perspective. Because actually we achieve something. We all the time we try to change something in the world, and actually now we having the fruits of it. We always ecological crisis actually is a fruit what we as a humans can't make a change for the global things. So it's now we can be very proud of us to make a change, and sometimes maybe the change is not for good, and we should think to have a full stop and say maybe we should change, or at least try not to change anything at all. Maybe it could be the best way to our society to prosper and to be in very commonness with the whole nature itself. So yeah, so it's a big thoughts about small problems, some fish farms, fish factories, to Iceland, to European level or global level, but also deeper into this problem. So I think we will talk about more and more, and it also opens a lot of things. I think in exhibition we also have a lot of nice examples how this kind of nature is also have an impact on us, and how we're really experiencing the new ideas to being here in Iceland, especially who are not natives or not living as an artist here as well. So it's really not about just migration and all these problems, but also how it's really interacts with us. We also know a little bit like migrants for 10 days at least in Iceland, and it really have an impact on us as an artist, as a human beings as well. So thank you for being here, and very nice to have this nice talks of both of you. Okay. Thank you.
This is exactly what we have to have in mind. This is about this. One world or many, and also
yes.
The nature and everything. It's yeah, but we can't do it all. But we are so lucky that here is among us our one of our good artists, Ruri, and I would like her because I know that she knows the story of both how, when they were beginning with the exhibition here in Korpúlfsstaðir, and also about this place. So, Ruri, would it be too much to ask? Because I know that you know this, because we had a small talk here earlier with some other people, and she knows this story better than anybody else about art and Korpúlfsstaðir.
No, not about art, unfortunately.
Art in Korpúlfsstaðir.
I was not really coming to speak yet. Before that, I have to, if I am allowed to, reflect on the two speakers here, because there's three speakers actually, very inspiring words you have given to us here. I myself am like to work in my art on the big time. Part of my art is about time, and it's not because I'm so interested in the 1 hour or 2 hours we are spending here together, although I think they are very valuable, but to think about life in the long time span from the creation of the earth till the time we are living today and to the time we want to exist in the future. And when we simultaneously think about our own life, which might be 100 years maximum, or the day, which is 24 hours, and then also think about the lifetime of the universe, we think in a different way. And we leave out the separations. And it's the separations that you have been discussing here, which is one of our big dangers for our existence. Another aspect is that the earth is a living being. How can we, because each and every atom in our body comes from earth. And if earth is not a living being, how can we be living? It's impossible from my point of view. But I may be stupid, that's another thing, we don't have to discuss that. And as the earth is one living being, the humankind, we can see that as another living being. And each individual is just one atom in the body of that living being. So when we think about it in that way, it becomes more ridiculous than before that we should be avoiding or fighting each other or keeping each other out. That means this body is not a wholesome body. So, and as a living being, the humankind is living in symbiosis with the earth. So that means we have to keep a good relation with the earth if that symbiosis is to work for us, if we are going to exist. So I think for me this is a fundamental thought. So I just wanted to add that to the earlier conversation here, or presentations. And then going back to Iceland, as a young artist I was studying abroad, and I was often asked, how is it coming from the middle of nowhere? And I would usually reply, well, it may be the middle of nowhere for you, but for us, it's the center of the universe. On the globe, there is no center. On the surface of a globe, there is no center. So it's a relative idea to say New York is a center or Paris is a center for art. You know. Why shouldn't Lithuania be the center for art?
It is.
Yeah, I saw the icons in Kaunas, in the National Museum in Kaunas. I think they are very central. So, but here in Iceland, when I'm starting as a young artist, we were still pretty isolated geographically speaking. But living on an island offers us a certain point of view, because we know there is a horizon, the ocean, and something tells us that there are other lands beyond that horizon. And that creates a link, although it's only an imaginary until we go abroad. So it creates curiosity. So in some way, it is stimulating. And when I was young, everyone who wanted to study on an academic level, university level, would have to go abroad for a master's degree. And I used to say this has saved us from becoming a stagnant society. Because people go abroad, they learn to know other nations, other cultures, other people, and other information, and they bring it back. Some of them migrate to the other country. But that's a kind of a living being, you know, people go and people come. I think that was very important for the development of the culture in Iceland. And then artists here, not only being hungry, thirsty, curious, they started to group together, more or less. And for the Sculpture Union, because we are coming now back to this house here, the Sculpture Union was founded in 1972, and in 1973 there was made an agreement with the mayor of the city that the Sculpture Union could rent about 1/4 of the building in the other end there for 1 Icelandic krona a year. Symbolic for 20 years. And well, unfortunately, this was the part of the house that had burned down in 1967. So there was a lot of work to rebuild that place. So the Sculpture Union rebuilt it, and had about 1/3 of the big gallery was our collective studio. And having a collective studio was the cradle of sculpture in Iceland, a contemporary sculpture. Because then young artists had the opportunity to have access to machinery and space to work in a bigger context than in their small studios. And just knowing that there was this space had a very inspiring effect. Before that, it was, you know, one had to be 90% stupid, you know, crazy to become a sculptor, you know. Because it was an impossible situation, more or less. So we only have, I think, some 3 sculptors before that. Well, and then the Sculpture Union was very broad-minded. It was never trying to interfere with the styles or trends that artists wanted to work with. And very quickly, because I was invited into the union in 1974, and my first piece was a performance. So I mean, we defined sculpture as 3-dimensional art, or 4 dimensions, or more dimensions if they were invited into. I mean, if we would get to know them. So video artists were welcomed, and so on. And at one time, for instance, Richard Serra was coming to Iceland. He was invited by the Reykjavik city and the Artist Association to study whether he would be interested to make an outdoor installation in Iceland. And I was asked to be one of his guides, and we were going to study stone mines in Iceland, and of course we went to see Geysir and Gullfoss and Þingvellir, and then I was in the car I was telling him about the art situation in Iceland, and that there was a collective studio on the way back to town. There was no houses around here at the time. The farmhouse was alone here in a big field. And he was very impressed and said, collective studio? You have a collective studio in Iceland? Yes, I said. He said, that would be impossible in the States. So he wanted to see it. And when he was out here, out front, he was looking at Geldinganes, the island out there. And I could sense that there was something happening. And that's when he got the idea for the work to visit. And he was so impressed when coming here and visiting studios that he offered to have a meeting with the Sculptor Union after the work was inaugurated in Viðey. And he gave his commission and created a foundation to sponsor or give sponsor grant to one sculptor, young sculptor or three-dimensional artist. It was supposed to be once a year. I don't remember how it is today. So, I mean, collective work is unique. It is something that we really have to value more. It has. I myself have been working in founding the Living Art Museum, building up the Sculpture Union, starting an inter-Scandinavian artist cooperative called Experimental Environment, and then I am kindly I have stepped away because younger people are much more energetic and interesting, and should have the field and carry it onwards and build on the old foundation and start new foundations. I mean, I'm talking about mental foundations. And yeah, that was what I was going to tell you, wasn't it, Anna?
Yeah,
oh yes, no, we
I
had.
remember you talked about this outdoor.
We had the Sculpture Union. The Sculpture Union had its first official exhibition here in 1980 in the springtime, and that was both outdoors and in the indoor galleries and studios. The first guest atelier in Iceland for visual artists was in the Sculpture Union's park over there. So the very first one. And but in 1980 was the first exhibition of the Experimental Environment Cooperative, and we had 5 artists coming from each of the countries, Finland, Sweden, Norway and Denmark, and 15 artists from Iceland, making a huge exhibition here. That the work that was furthest to the east was from the top of the mountain, and they were spreading all the way into the ocean, outdoors, and then we used all indoor space as well, and the courtyard over there. So it was at least 45 artworks, performances and installations, and it was the beginning of this 10 exhibitions of artists in the Nordic countries. And gradually the museums took over this model of the idea was, starting idea of experimental environment was that there were cooperatives in the Nordic countries where artworks were sent from, there was created a package exhibition that would travel from one country to the next country with works from all the countries. And this was terribly expensive to ship all these artworks around. So our model was to send the artists and create the artworks on spot. So usually we had 3 weeks of the preparation, and then the artworks it was outdoor exhibitions, and they would be standing there sometimes till the next year, sometimes for the remainder of the summer until autumn. So altogether there have been well over 100 artists participating in those projects. But when the museums adopted the model, we didn't see a reason to overexhaust ourselves in organizing these projects anymore. We had achieved more communication between the artists. Thank you.
I have to say, because for one reason, I am so proud of the Scottish Society, because I'm a member there, and some of us here is also. But the thing is that even though they started there, it has been one of our most important thing to have outdoor exhibitions, because for sculptures it's normally very difficult to find a place. So we have been making many, or the Sculpture Union has been making many outdoor exhibitions, but mainly with 4 Icelandic artists. So anyway, now it's almost time over, and I would very much like that Paulina, our very good friend and co-operator, or she's working with us anyway, in good English. And she is from the museum in Torun, and has been our contact person for many years. So, Paulina, if you would be kind enough to say some words, or...
Okay. So first I would like to say that I am really happy that we finally meet here, because, you know, the project was supposed to start in the previous year, or we were supposed to meet in May in Poland, but this whole COVID situation complicated our plan. So I am happy that we generally have this opportunity to meet here. And what I would like to say, so I would like to thank you, Anna and Raga. You know, it was incredible as a work of yours here. You know, with this all COVID somehow in the background, which also complicated our plans here. Yes, because we don't have Martynas with us. He is in hospital. You were also absent for a few days. But what I would like to say, I find Iceland a country of very big potential, because I think that people have you know, incredible need to meet each other. Yes, and I would like to give an example, which is surprising for me also, because you know, I love your hot springs. It's for me, it's something, you know, like, you know, this connection between this hot water and you know, cold air. So I've been on Thursday on swimming pool. Yes, so I was in hot bath, and of course I was listening to the people, and a lot of them was Polish voices, yes, Polish kids, you know, playing around, etc. And in one hot tube, I met 2 Polish guys, which we are started to talk, and I just invited them to come here, and you know, they came. So they are One is Polish worker who is a migrant here because he has been living here 2 years. So it's for me it's a proof how people are ready to come. It's like when you meet somebody face to face, it's like the crucial crucial things to improve our society, because then when we can opportunity to talk to each other, to get to know, then the second person is not more the alien. Yes, it's something who you find the common ground, like naturally. Yes. So I think that also I think yesterday it was a big group of Lithuanian people who just came like that because you invited them.
Someone really wanted the Salvation.
Yes, so it's it's for me it's a big potential, because in Poland it would be, I don't know, it's a big country, and if I don't know, if I invite somebody somewhere, it's like no, maybe maybe yes, maybe not, yes, but it's not that Also, Polish embassy, yes. I just told yesterday that we have this meeting, and we have people here. So it's like a big step for to build something more closer, and So it's one thing. I think like a conclusion that yes, this our meetings are somehow very useful. How to say yes. And what I would like to maybe to start to talk about some evaluation of the project, but I don't know if it's now time, because I think that some people would like to maybe say some conclusions about their stay here. So maybe I collected some thoughts. So I don't know if you prefer to to eat or maybe to start some discussion first, because I think that everybody came here with maybe not different, but somehow different expectations, yes, and also about residency, about exhibition. So of course we are very happy about all this meeting. But for example, exhibition, I know that maybe some people would like to have it more coherent, let's say, that more maybe that it's more built and more that we give more thoughts and more some things which we can create in this space, in this potential. Other people rather prefer to have like some kind of workshop, that it's still in process, that it's more about this being together. I heard also before that maybe it will be one work, one home which we create, yes. So, it was very different starting points, I think, and what we have finally, I think it's visible that the exhibition is somehow divided on some, I don't know, parts, that we can find some artists who really dedicated themselves to the idea of this home of the migrants. They created works connected with that. Other we have some artists who I think did rather more individual works. So it's they are beautiful, but aesthetic. But it's not that this idea of home inside. Yes, and the third group, I would say, is that people who somehow they are intervened. People who tried to find some, I don't know, common ground, like doing, I don't know, food together. We have photos of each of us. We have some stones which were found during our way to Volcano, plus some stories about it. So we have these plates which were made for almost each of us. So we have like some, groups. Of course, I don't criticize that. It's only just like for me, it's like the starting point to know the people, yes, who we are, who can do what, and just to maybe we can talk what what is the next step, yes? Now we know what we can expect, let's say, yes, who is doing what, so yes, so maybe I thought that maybe you wanted also to have, to say something about your thoughts. I think that we also a bit missed of Icelandic artists during the process here. So I heard that, of course, we had Petur all the time with us. We visit Anna house. We had you, but it's a bit of lack of like we are now. Yes, that we are all in the same table. We can discuss. We can. I don't know, share our thoughts. Yes, maybe also to have more scientific, approach to all of that. So I just would like to start. I don't know, the discussion. Maybe you wanted to say something about what do you feel and what you expect to be the next. Yes. The next.
Are you talking to me?
No.
I say.
No. It's just I'm looking at the food here, so it's
Your footage directly to the screen.
like Anna. No, but
I have to say it's. I have the feeling if like I look really forward to Torun because. It's not that I don't look forward to Poland, it's different, but what I think somehow, these people who came to Iceland and are living in Seljavegur, they have found in a way common ground. Because I think they are living together, but unfortunately, our Icelandic artists have not been living there. So they have made some community. They have been cooking together and talking and doing all this, what I thought would be so nice. But I know that in Torun it will be totally different because we cannot live in the same place, so each one has to be there and there and there. But we will have the same working place, which is very interesting. But I think, because first, Paulina mentioned that it was not supposed to start here. It was supposed to start, but of course, doesn't everybody know about COVID? That was the reason, and it is the reason for so many things. But if it would have been here during the summertime, it would also have been so nice, because then we could have been working outside, inside, and this is what I find so interesting myself, But, well, let's see what will happen, but I think it will be so totally different to be in this beautiful museum, Coca Gallery in Torun. We will, from us here in Iceland, get a little bit shocked because it's white. So maybe we all start to make some fine lines or something. But anyway, if somebody likes to say something, it would be interesting. Have any of you any questions? Or do you want to say something?
Maybe if I can just pick up on a bit of what we've
Yeah,
all been
it
sort
would be
of
great.
talking about, and then of course everyone's hungry, sandwiches and stuff. So, but what we've been talking about, and the reason why it's so important that you as artists and us sort of intellectual whatever. we like to think of ourselves as artists of a sort, anyhow, people who are seeking to create stuff, and we know how much of a struggle that is. Whether you painting a painting or thinking about a sculpture or an exhibition or a paper you have to deliver at the university or a course or whatever, is that we all have to take a chance. When you start a painting, if you know exactly what it's going to be about, then it's probably not going to be a good painting. It's when the work you're doing becomes bigger than yourself and you don't fully understand and you take a chance. You put up an exhibition and you really don't know if anybody's going to like it or if anybody's going to sort of understand or...
That's the best feeling.
That's the best feeling, exactly. Yeah, when you stand on stage and you start to sing and you have no idea what the response is going to be. But this is exactly why we have a responsibility, a social responsibility also, because the people who are driving the division, the nationalist, populist, sort of conservative politics that we see around the world today, they want things to be the same. And they have slogans like "Make America Great Again," or "Switzerland for the Swiss," you know, or that sort of thing. So basically, no change. Everything should be as it is forever. And of course, their idea of what it is that they want to preserve is usually not realistic but ideological. So, I mean, what was this great America that people wanted to bring back? You know, it's God knows. You know, was it time of slavery? You know, that's you know. So it's ideology, and it's encouraging people to resist change, not to take any risks. And it's very easy to convince people of this because taking a risk is a risk. You know, you don't know what's going to happen.
Courage.
Yeah, it takes courage. But that's the idea, I think, that we as creative types and strange people have to stand by. We have to show by our example how taking a risk, how taking a chance, meeting other people, discussing things, creating stuff together, how that can actually be much more rewarding than staying the same. So we can be agents for change, because that's already in our nature. I mean, that's what we do. We're always taking risks. When Ruri and the others founded the Sculpture Association and made the deal with the city, they had no idea how it would turn out. And actually, there were many sort of dramatic events in this story. And so it is everywhere. But that's not a sign of failure. That's a sign of success. Because we took the chance and we tried to imagine something different and invited people to see that one can take a chance and one can risk something, and that reaps rewards. Staying the same, well, that's just the same.
I want to say, one way to say maybe what common ground is diversity. Because when I was, with you guys here, I think you are, you're all different, but we have, of course, one goal to make a common ground. Everybody are really big thinkers, I think, here in this. They really want equality, so and the possibility for everyone, and a lot of people. They're very different, and I have to because I saw that, for example, two guys here, Andreas, he made me think about because he is talking about the mist
in nature. And the fog is everywhere. Fog is in towns, but you don't see mist coming from the natural ground, only in nature. So I was thinking that we should not define ourselves by nationality, but we are different, and we should really welcome that. And some people like the nature, and Andrii says that he doesn't feel good if he hasn't asphalt under his feet. So we are so different. But we should, I think the most important thing for me is that we care for each other. We need to, because every single person has to feel good in herself. And that is our responsibility to make that happen also for our fellow people around us. So, this is mine.
Who else?
Anna, I think it's time for people to just sort of stand up and have a sandwich, and we will keep talking. You don't have to worry about that. We won't stop.
I think let's eat. Yeah. Thank you all for being so good listeners. So now we continue.
So the gallery